Hello, my name is Deirdre Fulton, and I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Religion at Baylor University. I primarily work studying the Bible, but I also get the privilege of working on archaeological excavations as a zooarchaeologist. Zooarchaeology is the study of faunal remains, and faunal remains are the things when an animal dies, the things that are left behind that we can find in an archaeological excavation. Things like bone and things like hides and hair sometimes, and other remains like shells, and from fish we can find fish scales occasionally, and also things like protein and DNA. And there are studies that are also conducted on materials like DNA of animals and that are left behind in archaeological excavations.
All right, and so what are some of the animals that you found in Ashkelon?
At Ashkelon, we find a lot of different animals. You can find lots of different things because they're on the Mediterranean Sea. So you'll find a lot of marine life, that is life in the ocean, in the sea. But you also find, of course, mammals on land, primarily land mammals, things like sheep and goats and cows. Those are your big three primary animals that you find. But we also find other things like deer sometimes, gazelle more commonly than deer. We occasionally find dogs and cats and other animals like that. And we also find a lot of birds, different kinds of birds at Ashkelon.
And do you find...
and sometimes we find sea turtles too, sea turtles.
Ooh. Do you find the same amount of animals all through all the different time periods? Are the animals always the same?
No, animals change over time. What people are interested in raising and what people are interested in eating changes depending on who's living at Ashkelon, when they're living at Ashkelon, and maybe what the diet and environment of their specific time period would force them to eat, or people are interested in eating. So we find different kinds of animals throughout the different eras. An example of that is we find at certain time periods a lot more cow consumption. They're eating a lot more cattle, big cows, than they are at other times. At other times they're eating more fish, or they might be eating more bird. And another example would be the introduction of the chicken. In modern day American society, we eat a lot of chicken, but chicken wasn't always in the Mediterranean world. And so when the chicken makes its way, carried by people, by the way, it didn't migrate itself, over from Asia, Eastern Asia, all the way over to Western Asia, that is the area where Ashkelon is, suddenly you see a lot of chicken, and we don't find that in earlier time periods.
And what do you see that there is a change? I know that sometimes if there's more people in an area, there's less space for bigger animals. Was that the case in Ashkelon?
That's an interesting question that we have to grapple with. Sometimes when you have more people, the resources get more scarce, and particularly at a place like Ashkelon, where it's not a very rainy climate. It's a pretty dry, arid city compared to the cities in northern Israel that have a bit of a wetter climate. They can raise more cattle near the big cows near their cities, and so they have a higher rate of cattle consumption generally than, say, a city like Ashkelon. But when you get more people, the thing that more people can bring is also more money. And if you have more money, then you have the resources maybe to bring cows from farther away, because farmers will take the risk of bringing their animals a farther distance if they know people are going to pay for them. So you might find actually that more people, even if it makes it so the resources might seem more scarce, actually creates an environment where an economy can provide and bring the necessities or the animals that you want from farther distances.
Okay. Are things like gazelles brought into, or were those native to the Ashkelon area?
Gazelles are actually native. There are three types of gazelles, and gazelles are like arid climates, and so Ashkelon was actually perfect for the gazelle. And in fact, the National Park of Ashkelon to this day has gazelles that run through the park in the morning. So in that area, we do find gazelles. Actually, deer are what are strange at Ashkelon, because deer like the forests just like they do in modern times. So if you find deer remains at Ashkelon, chances are it's something that was brought in from a far distance away rather than something that was local.
Okay.
And most often, the thing that you find of deer products are actually the antlers of a deer, because the antlers can be used to make tools and things like handles of a knife or handles of silverware or anything like that, or they can be used for decorative items. So deer are rarer than gazelle at Ashkelon.
And did you find, what was the most populous animal that you found? Like, have you found the most sheep goat? Have you found the most cows? Have you found the most fish? What was the biggest population of animals that you found overall?
Well, the most common thing people ate were sheep or goats.
Okay.
And we call them sheep goats because oftentimes you can't tell the difference between a sheep or a goat when you're looking at the animal bones. So we just refer to them as sheep goat, even though there is no animal sheep goat. We talk about them as one, but we recognize the fact that in reality, a sheep and a goat are very different animals. And generally speaking, in a very populated city, during the historical periods of excavation, sheep are generally preferred over goat. Goat are rascals. They like to get into trees and they can cause all sorts of trouble, but sheep are kind of more docile, generally kind of dumber animals. And so they can be herded easier. And also, the sheep product of wool makes it so oftentimes shepherds would rather raise sheep because they can also get another product out of the animal, and that's the wool to make clothing or to do all sorts of different things with.
All right. Well, thank you very much for speaking with us. Deirdre, is there anything else you wanted to add in?
Just that the animal bones are something that a lot of people don't think about when they first think about archaeology. But it's just like pottery or like any other thing we look at in archaeology. It's another means to understand an ancient society. And so what really makes me interested in animal bones is that you get to talk about diet, what people ate, and people care about what they eat. They really do. So I find this a very interesting study, and I'm just very glad to be part of the Ashkelon excavation and glad to be a part of a team that's looking at a site that covers so many different time periods. And we can talk about changes and trends and differences and all sorts of stuff like that. That's just fun for archaeology.